Your speech also has to be delivered, not read, so structure really, really matters. And this is sort of the layout of the overall structure and what it should look like. There should be a little bit of an introduction first about your issue, and be sure to start that with a hook. So start that with some kind of persuasive language technique from the get go to hook your audience in and make them interested from the get go. A lot of students like to start with something like a rhetorical question or an interesting fact or a statement from the very beginning before they start establishing the context. Remember, context, audience, and persona are also what you receive marks for on this task. So you must create some context to your piece. Is it, just like post COVID-19? Is the context relating to some kind of war tension somewhere or crisis? Is it relating to inflation in today's society? So establish a clear context when you're providing that introduction as well, because you get marks for that as well. You must be using language that clearly targets a specific audience as well. So think about what kind of language you would use and what kind of PLTs and appeals you would use to appeal to different audiences and incorporate that throughout your piece. And if you're also using a persona rather than just presenting as a student, make sure to establish that early on in your introduction. In your introduction, your point of view for or against should be made really clear as well, as well as your main reason behind that opinion, your main reason for being for or against the issue, and what do you want your audience to do or feel? What is the main thing that you're trying to get them out of it? Raise awareness, some kind of call to action, perhaps, whatever that may be. And then your free arguments, your free arguments really should be including your counter argument and the rebuttal to that. So I said before that you shouldn't spend too long on this counter argument, right? You should spend much longer on your actual rebuttal. So this is a good way to view it. Some might argue and present that stakeholder opinion. Why do people have the opposite opinion to yours? Give that one reason and then refute it. However, this is incorrect because, and then you start most of your third argument is relating to your rebuttal, and it's not about the counter argument. Okay, you shouldn't spend heaps of time on this counter argument because that is not your main position. So if you do, that's going to create an inconsistency in your oral. In your conclusion, try to summarize, end with a bang. Make some kind of call to action, make some kind of, strong appeal, and come up with a really engaging way to end. So a plan to a speech could look something like this. I stress the importance of planning before you actually write. So obviously this is not a current issue, but this is a really good example. If you think about current issues, again, I told you about some pages you can go to, but or watching the news, there are lots of current issues. I think some engaging ones are the cost of living and housing crisis, artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, war tensions and current wars is a bit too controversial. I would actually abstain from it. Crime rates increasing, risk of international spread of disease and fears of emerging diseases. There's lots of different topics ongoingly. Just choose something you're engaged with. So this is what a plan could look like. For instance, my contention is that the Australian government must implement a sugar tax. So I have a perspective for the issue. My argument one, I wanted to introduce that current health measures such as the health star rating, the voluntary codes of conduct and marketing are inadequate to reduce sugar consumption. For my second argument, I will go into the fact that taxation revenue can be used on recreational and health-related infrastructure such as hospitals, which could create more jobs. So the sugar tax would have an economic benefit to it. And then for my rebuttal, I might go into the fact that some argue that taxing sugar will have detrimental impacts on the sugar industry, but that this will encourage companies to create healthier food products. So you can clearly see both my counter argument and my rebuttal there. I would also add my evidence and a little dot point plan as to how I'm going to approach each and every single one of the arguments and how they're going to structure chronologically before I write them as well. Okay, now talking about some techniques. So starting with a hook, we said starting with a hook means starting with some kind of persuasive language technique. So let's have a look at this one. Consider this. An Australian Muslim woman of 2 is deeply in love with the Victorian town her family feels lucky to call home. But after she clicks on a Facebook page titled Stop the Mosque in Bendigo and is met with a torrent of anti Islamic rhetoric and even personal threats, she begins to question the community she thought had embraced her family. So, this is a great hook to start with. So, consider this. That phrase is a cliche, it's a generalized saying. Be careful with them because if you don't do them effectively, they can diminish the quality of your piece. But in this case, this was effective. And also the fact that we started with an example. This is not anecdotal evidence because it's not about the author themselves, but an example, storytelling, right? And there's lots of also imagery embedded within this start. Okay, so that's a great hook. Having a look at another one. African Americans line the streets of their communities with their hands up as they beg cops not to shoot. As the movement started in the wake of Trayvon Martin's death, still echoes in their hearts, still pleading for their right to safety and protection, reminding us that their lives matter, that Black lives matter. So, what's engaging about this hook? We see the repetition, reminding that their lives matter, that Black lives matter. Engaging repetition, made use of short sentence structure to add an emphasis as well. We don't want to see long, convoluted sentences in an oral too often because that's very disengaging as well. And then, of course, this violent imagery with negative connotations. They beg cops not to shoot. Still echoes in their hearts. That's really emotive language. So this makes for a great hook as well. Another one. In sweeping the world are the voices joining together in a mighty chorus that is finally saying, time's up. That the ages of men like Harvey Weinstein hiding behind their fame are long gone. That the world must be a better place for #MeToo. Again, imagery, emotive language has been used, sweeping the world, and then repetition, that the ages, that the world creates that engaging start. There's another one here that you can have a look at and read. But I think everyone should get the idea. So what are some of the requirements of this task and in general to create that effective, engaging speech? You must be using a range of PLTs embedded throughout. So this is what you have to analyze in your statement of intention as well, is your deliberate choices. So make sure you've planned to make sure your oral has enough PLTs. Really, they should be all over the place. Otherwise, your piece isn't really persuasive. So if you struggle with that, do heaps of planning before you start writing about what kind of ones you want to embed and how many you want to be there for each argument. You need to be able to show how you can use language to persuade and try to make your PLTs easily identifiable. But if they're not so easily identifiable, you've got that statement of intention accompanying your piece and you're able to detail some of your intent and what you've used. So this is an example here of how to make them easily identifiable. This is supported by the professor of the Institute for Religion, Politics, and Society at ANU, Irfan Ahmad, who noted that with the rise of ISIS, claimed violence, Muslims in our community and around the world are slowly losing their individualism. So we can clearly see that this is expert evidence. How? Because it's been properly credited, the person has also been named, and context has been provided for the example. And it flows smoothly. It's smoothly embedded into the sentence. It's not standing as some kind of quote where you say, Irfan Ahmad says, quote, end sentence. Okay? And we can see that highlighted there. This is supported by. Same when you use a statistic. You can say something like research from institution suggests that